Hello and welcome everyone. We're really sorry for the delay. We had some technical issues going on, but that's all done now. Thank you for your patience. Today we're live with the CA Finals All India Rank 1 holder for 2020, Komal Jain. Komal, it's a privilege to have you here, and I want to give you the opportunity to tell our audience about yourself a little bit.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. It's truly my pleasure. So about me, I basically graduated. I'm from Mumbai, Ghatkopar. I graduated from R.A. Podar College in 2019. I started pursuing chartered accountancy along with BCom. So I gave my first level, which is CPT, in 2016. Then I gave my IPCC in 2017, in which I secured an All India rank 4. I did my articleship with KPMG India for 2 years in the corporate and international tax department. Then I went for industrial training with Cadbury India for 1 year, where I worked in the finance domain. My CA final attempt was scheduled in May 2020, but owing to this pandemic and the constant delays, the exam was conducted in November 2020. The results were out on 1st of February.
Okay, and that's when we learned all the magic that you did on the exam, didn't we?
Yeah.
So let's dive in, Komal. About 70,000, perhaps even more individuals take up the CA final exam each year, but not everybody scores the AIR one. What is it that you did differently in your preparation?
Okay. So if I were to talk about me, I think the main, the thing which I want to stress the most is to have a very balanced strategy for this exam. So we usually prepare for CA final for 3 years. Like after articleship, there is a 3-year gap and then there's the final exam. And it becomes all the more challenging because we need to manage articleship classes and studies. So it becomes really challenging. For this, what I suggest is to have a very balanced strategy. So what I really did was I started my classes within 6 months of clearing IPCC. I really made sure that I do not miss any class and gain as much conceptual understanding as I can of all the subjects. Because when you have a gap in understanding itself, it goes a long way, and then there's always a confusion in your mind. So in order to avoid that, I ensured that I do not miss any classes and gain as much understanding as I could. So then for 2 years, basically this thing went on. Like I attended classes and simultaneously concentrated on articleship. In the last year of my articleship, the priorities actually were really changed. So now it was time to focus more on the exams than the articleship. So I really started giving dedicated 2-3 hours every day to basically start the momentum and set the momentum for the study leave. Because when we generally go on study leave for the last 4 months, we have to really sit for 12 to 14 hours to study. So in order to set the momentum in the last 2-3 months, I dedicatedly starting giving some hours before going for the study leaves. What I ensured is I have a definite clarity about how I need to plan this entire 4 months, because I think that is most crucial. So I really ensure that I have clarity over the resources I need to use, the subjects, the sequence of the subjects I need to plan, the hours I need to dedicate, the materials I need to use. So everything, that clears, I think clarity over all this is very essential. So what is it? The CA final is basically a 3-hour game. For every subject, there's a 3-hour paper and it's a 3-hour game. So my main focus was to ensure that I do not leave anything that would, make me deliver the best answers within 3 hours. So in order to ensure that, planning is okay, I mean, then you start studying, you sit for long hours. And I think there is no alternative to hard work, definitely. You really need a lot of dedication and a lot of motivation to survive those 4 months. But there are other aspects as well which are usually ignored by people, which is, I think, more towards time management, presentation, So in order to ensure these things, I ensure that I give mock tests, on a regular basis. Once I give those tests, I really understand a lot of things, like how do I need to manage my time? Am I studying in the right direction? Or maybe something I need to change. So analyzing those papers, really help you to understand a lot of these aspects as well. Is there anything I need to work on my presentation? So, all this was really something which I really worked on. And basically, the 1.5 hour, for 1.5 day that you get before your exams is, I think, the game changer. I mean, if you really can plan that well, you can really, perform well in your exam. So, a very, minute planning for those 1.5 days before every exam was also very critical. So I think it's not about that, if you're giving 12 to 14 hours a day, you'll definitely get the desired results. Your efforts should be in the right direction. You should really like know that how much time should you give to a particular subject or maybe a particular topic, and not be unreasonable, like just studying one subject for long and then you just miss out on the rest. So I think it's a host of your conceptual clarity, your syllabus coverage, your time management, speed, planning. I mean, a lot of thing goes. And if you can balance everything in a better manner, I think you can just give your best in those 3 hours and, can deal with this.
Okay, awesome. Thanks so much for that answer. I think that really sums up how, all the factors, not just your studies, but also, let's say, how you take time, how much time you take, when do you start preparing, all of that bunch of things give the kind of results that you've gotten. And with that, I'd like to move on to the next question, which is, Komal, what propelled you to choose CA as a profession? I mean, why not go for other alternatives like a CFA or an MBA in finance? Why CA?
Okay, so when I was like deciding on my career opportunities, CA intrigued me, lot, because CA gives you a bundle of fields that you can venture into. Like you can actually study a lot of subjects at one time, and really you can check, where you can develop your taste. So I think that opportunity to, explore a lot of things together and then decide on which field you can want to venture in. So I think CFA and MBA was never a trade-off for me, because that is something you can even do after you do your CA. So what I thought was, let's do CA and let's see like which field is really working well for me. And if it's finance, then you can anyways, to build on it, you can do a CFA together or an MBA maybe for any other field. So I think the options that you get while pursuing CA was something that I really looked for.
Okay, got it. So your point was that this CA would give you would give you a head start,
Right.
and let's say later on you could always do a CFA or an MBA.
Right.
Okay, awesome. And I just want to remind the audience, you can ask your questions in the chat box. We'll take them up later on once we are done speaking with Komal. Komal, the next question that I have for you is, now that you're here, now that you are AIR 1 for the CA finals, what is it that you're looking forward to in your career? What are the exciting opportunities that you're looking forward to next?
Yeah. So when I started with my articleship, I sensed that I was apparently interested in finance. So in order to actually see like what's finance from inside, I decided to take up industrial training in my third year of articleship. That would actually help me understand whether what what is apparent and what is actually inside are the same things or not. So I did my industrial training in the finance domain, and what I thought was it worked really well for me. I mean, I genuinely was interested in that particular field. So I think mainly I would like to take that forward and look for a profile in corporate finance in some leading MNC, or maybe a second option which I'm very open to exploring is management consulting with something like a BCG or Bain and the other firms which are there. So I think these are the two options which I'm keeping open, and let's see what the opportunities are there, and then we can decide.
Okay, awesome. This is lovely. Thank you for your answers. And now we've opened the floor for questions from the audience. And the one question that we'll take up right now is one of the aspirant wants to know, what is your mock test strategy, wants to know the specific strategy you took up with the mock test series.
Yeah. So what did I do when I started, studying for the first time in the study leave, like the first reading which I was supposed to do? So in that time, I used to allot a particular days for a particular subject. So I used to study only one subject at a time. So suppose for a particular subject, I've allotted, 6 to 7 days maybe. So once I'm done studying that subject holistically, I'll make sure that I write a particular mock test for that subject. So that will also, help me to understand that whether I'm actually able to recollect those things, whether I'm actually confident with that subject. And I think mock test is something that will give you an idea over a lot of aspects. I mean, whether are you approaching the paper correctly? Is there something you did wrong this time which you really need to improve? Something over your speed, your presentation. And I think analyzing that is very, very important. It's not just you just write your mock test and then you are like, okay, this much marks I've got and I have nothing to do on it. I mean, if you don't analyze it, and then I think it is like there's no point of writing those papers. So every time I wrote a mock test, I definitely ensured I took something out of it and improved it the other time when I wrote the next one. So I mean, in this way, I used to plan those mock tests.
Oh, okay, awesome. Then we have Ranveer Soni who asks, how did you manage to cover the syllabus in the study leave since you generally get lesser study leave in industrial training?
Yeah. So I think before I decided to go for industrial training, I had a roadmap in mind very clear that I'm getting less of leave, so I really need to compensate for that, and I will have to work harder for that, to compensate for this lesser leaves I got. So before I actually started my leave, I had a definite plan in hand as to how will I manage in those 4 months. And I think if there's a plan and you are adhering to it dedicatedly, then I think you can definitely cover the entire syllabus, and you definitely need to work harder, and so you need to start your studies in a little advance than the others do. But I think a plan in hand and adhering to that would definitely make that possible.
Oh, okay, awesome. We have more questions regarding how you manage your IPCC, your college, and all of these things. But I think the answer would be finding that balance, like you said initially, between what you want to do, getting clarity on how you want to do it,
Right.
and actually putting in the effort and going ahead and doing it.
Right. You need to prioritize very, you need to be very clear on your priorities. I mean, at that point of time, what is your priority? If it's, in the first, usually in the first 2 years of articleship, you can definitely make your articleship a priority and just make sure that you attend classes. But you need to really change your priorities once your exams are on your head. And, you need to find that right balance every time between a lot of things. So that's
Right. And if I were to ask you to point out some mistakes that you've seen people make when they take up the IPCC or the CA finals, what would those be, and how did you avoid making those mistakes?
okay. So I think the biggest mistake that people do is I think they do not write mock tests. I mean, a lot of people say that we were busy covering the entire syllabus, but we didn't get time, and I think this is a waste of time. And but I think if you go in the exam without writing even a single paper, you basically it's your first time you're attempting that such a long 3 hour paper, and that time you just cannot afford to mess up things in the first place. So I think writing this is very, very important, and it's definitely not a waste of time. I mean, I'd in fact say that even it's okay even if you leave 1 or 2 chapters, but I think this is very important because it makes you really confident from within when you go for the exam. Secondly, I've seen a lot of people doing a lot of ABC analysis and leaving few chapters for every subject, saying that they are not important. But I think I would really, really like to stress on the fact that coverage of the syllabus is extremely, extremely important. I mean, questions generally pop up from every corner of the syllabus, and when you leave some chapters for the exam, you are not in a position to complete your paper in the first place, because a lot of questions those are from those part, and your paper out of 100 marks now it becomes out of 80, and then it gets really difficult to score. So I think syllabus coverage is extremely crucial. And third, I would like to stress on something called conceptual clarity. Many times we tend to say that, okay, even if I've not understood something, I can just mug this up and just go. But I think since the way the papers are coming in the recent 2 to 3 attempts, I think this won't really help in the longer run. I mean, conceptual clarity is very, very important. Do not leave any gaps in understanding. And I think this were a few things I would want to highlight.
Okay. So the next question that we take up is Simranjeet Singh Komal, who asks, does Big Four allow you to do industrial training in the third year of your articleship?
So I think there is no any such rule or something which I'm aware that you cannot do, when you're doing Big Four with Articleship. It's absolutely team specific. If you are in a position to convince your managers or your seniors that, why you really want to go for this industrial training, and if they allow, I think there's no such bar or restriction that I'm aware of. And my managers were really supportive, and they really supported me to, go ahead and explore if I'm really interested in a particular field. So I think that's not a problem.
And if we just take a moment to dive in a little bit into your industrial training, how you got into it, how you went about it, would you like to answer that question?
Yeah. So firstly, you need to really decide on which profile you want to really take up industrial training. So once you're clear about that, so I think the best channel to really reach out to people is, I think, LinkedIn. I mean, that really helped me. So once I decided on the field, I started searching people, or maybe industrial trainees who are already working in some particular organization, and spoke to them and asked them to refer my candidature for the position. So I, and really people, I mean, they are very responsive, and they do really help, when you ask for help. So in that way, my interviews were scheduled. I gave couple of 3-4 interviews, chose the one which I thought, were really good on all terms. Like, you really need to manage your studies with that as well. So I mean, something which gives you very less, months of leave is also, not going to help, because you need to manage your studies as well. So I think something which is better on all parameters, was chosen. And then, I mean, it was a great experience. I mean, I'd suggest really people to take this up if you really want to explore into a particular domain. So it was a nice experience.
The next question is, how did you decide between audit and taxation for articleship?
Okay, so I think it was not a very tough decision for me, because I really didn't like audit at all as a subject, and tax was my favorite subject post IPCC. So I think this is a little simpler decision for me, but I think this is, I mean, a lot of people are very much confused. So I think the decision should be more based on what you want to do, a little, 3-4 years down the line. I mean, what is that you want to work in after your finals, and what role will support you in that direction. I mean, if you want to go something which revolves around business, I think audit is something that you should do. You get a good understanding of the business, and you need to you will learn to dive into a lot of aspects as well of business, and maybe that could be one aspect in which you can decide which field to go.
Right. Okay. Ashika asks, what is your subject-wise strategy? What was it, now that you have the rank? Your subject-wise strategy for theory and practical subjects, Komal?
Yeah. So I think for practical subjects like FR, SFM, I think understanding is very crucial. I mean, the concepts which are taught, you really need to understand, and you need to have a, equally, you should really practice sums on that. I mean, if you can just now not, read through it. So for practical subjects, I think practicing sums is a little important. There's also issues with time management, especially for practical subjects. So writing papers, again, really helps for this. So I think understanding, practicing sums, as much as necessary, and writing few papers would help you get through it. I think theory is a problem for a lot of people, and even for someone like me, because there's extremely vast syllabus, and it's not possible to remember those things a longer time. So I think for theory, I dedicated a little revisions. I try to revise it more times than I did practical. That is actually needed. And I think I used to focus on keywords a lot, so I didn't used to mug up like everything. I used to understand the crux of every topic, and remember the keywords so that I can write the rest on my own. Sometimes sticking to the legal language in subjects like law and tax is also very important. So if that can be done, that will be really helpful. So I think giving more number of revisions and focusing on the crux or the keywords, I think, is very crucial for theory subjects.
Oh, okay. Awesome. I mean, it's a pleasure speaking with you. I'm sure our audience is already so motivated when they listen to you. The next question that they're asking is, if you had to consider a trade-off between industrial training and rank, what would you prefer?
I mean, it is not really a trade-off, is what I would say. I mean, getting a rank is not that, if you don't do industrial training, you are sure that you will get a rank, or, if you do industrial training, you are not going to get a rank. I mean, there's nothing such. And I think it's more on how you can really balance both together and really plan it well. I think if you go for industrial training, and you really have a plan in hand before, I mean, a roadmap clear that, okay, what I need to do to balance both those things together, I think you can do both. I mean, you really don't need to do a trade off between the two.
Right. And if we would take some time to dive into your approaches towards specific subjects, would you be willing to, let's say, get into the 2 to 3 major subjects that you or other aspirants find challenging and tell the audience about how you tackle those individually?
Okay. So I think subjects that I would want to take up is audit, law, and DT. I think the three subjects because firstly, if I talk about DT is, I mean, very, very vast, extremely vast, is what I can say. I mean, the lengthiest subject of the entire syllabus. So I think there's always a problem that, people are not able to cover it entirely. And, a lot of things you just leave before the exam, and a limited syllabus is what you have covered. So I think the most important strategy for this is start summarizing from the first read itself. I mean, when you're reading things for the first time, do it exhaustively, holistically, and make sure you are summarizing it to as, small as possible, so that in your revisions you are able to really complete it. So I think, I mean, and as I said before that, covering a syllabus is extremely important, like the entire syllabus. So I think summarizing is the key for DT, and you really need to do it from the first reading itself. You need to be very conscious of, what am I reading and how am I going to do it the next time. So I think this is very important if I want to talk about DT. For the subject of law, I think the biggest challenge is the language, because the language is not something that you use day to day, and the legal language is really something which is a challenge. So I think in law, what is important is that you really, first of all, like the language that you have to use. I mean, if you don't use that language, there's the charm of the subject is gone, basically. So there's a lot of thrust on that language, and I think structuring is very important. I mean, in law you get case studies, so you need to really structure those well. I mean, you need to understand which provision you have to use and how do you conclude it. So you always have a structure in mind that, okay, this is the way I'm going to approach a question, this is the legal terms that I'm supposed to use, and then you answer a particular question. So I think in law this becomes very, very important. And for a subject like audit, so basically there's a notion that in audit it's only mugging up, and people generally tend to try to mug up the subject, and which is also pretty vast. So and you don't really remember in audit. I mean, it's very difficult to reproduce what you've studied. So I think the strategy for audit would be that you focus more on understanding rather than mugging up, because if you've understood something, at least you can think about it in the paper and write. But if you've mugged up and if you just forget even a single point, then I mean, you won't be able to write anything. So I think understanding, and again, as I said, keywords, remember, try to focus more on the keywords. You don't need to mug up everything. I mean, that's not humanly possible, and you will really mess up big time in the exam if you can't recollect what you've studied. So understand and focus more on the keywords is what I would want to suggest for audit.
Oh, okay. So if we were to talk about your approach towards making sure you remembered stuff, you would say that keywords would be most important, not paragraphs, not chunks, but just the key, and then you try and keep that in mind.
Yeah, one thing I would want to add. So for subjects like this, where there's a lot to remember and there's a problem that you don't remember things for a longer time, I think the revision videos on YouTube of a lot of professors really helped me a lot. So what I used to do is, if I am done with my, the agenda for the day, in the night, I just used to, put on YouTube and see revision videos of audit or law. So that usually, helped me recollect a lot of things while I was studying other subjects as well. And that, gave that constancy which is needed, because you study and then you forget in a shorter period of time. So those revision videos were really, really helpful. And I think that can be used for retaining things for a longer period of time.
Okay. We have a request from Karthik, who now wants to understand. He's really confused between CA and CS. Would you like to share your take on that?
Maybe I'm not the right person, since I'm not someone who's done both. But one thing which I wanted to say is, like if you are truly into law and you're very keen towards that particular subject, then I think CS is something which you should really explore. But you are, if you're open to studying a lot of subjects and exploring a lot of them together, then I think CA is something which you should really look for. I mean, maybe some one parameter which can take this decision.
Okay, the next quick question is, what were your learning outcomes from your industrial training?
Okay, so I think industrial training is something that actually gave me a pretty good insight on what a corporate looks like and how is it to, because we usually work in CA firms, and I think there's a huge shift when you shift to a corporate. I mean, it's a lot different. It's not the same. So I think you really understand how it looks like from inside, how it is segregated, what are the departments, and how do they function together. And especially in the field which you're going, you really understand. I mean, what it's from inside, because if from the outside we have a lot of notions, okay, this field will be this way, that field will be that way. So I think really getting an insight on how things look from inside the other way is, I think, was my biggest learning. And I really it helped me find out that whether I'm really interested in working in that particular role or not. So I think if you have something in mind, you should definitely go and explore it and see whether it's for you or not, so that you have a better direction when you have qualified. I mean, in which direction to go. So I think it gave me a very pretty good direction in what I want to shape my career.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So essentially, your decision to, let's say, go in a particular field was a function of the experience you had in your training, plus your, let's say, interest, plus
Right.
from a career point of view, when you look at it,
Right.
the prospects.
Perfect.
A lot of aspirants are curious, how did you even manage your studies with articleship? We spoke about time management,
Right.
but how is it that you manage that time, Komal? Tell us.
Yeah. So I think the most important thing here was discipline. So when you go to classes in the morning, then you have your office, and then you come home. So when we come home, we're really tired, and a lot of times we're like, no, we can't do anything else now, and we just want to rest. But I think instilling that sense of discipline, that no, I mean, 2 hours I have to give, and there's no alternative available, and I really have to sit for 2 hours and study for this. So I think that discipline is what the self discipline, I think, was the most important aspect that you need to instill in if you want to balance your studies with articleship. So that was one thing. And secondly, I mean, ask for support from your team also. So what I did was, whenever I felt that I was a little stressed or I wasn't able to manage it well, I openly asked my managers that I really need some support, I really need to go home early today, maybe I need to manage something, and they were like very supportive in this aspect as well. So I think your discipline is, I think, what matters the most when you have to manage a lot of things together.
And and then if we go from that point to talking about how you actually coached yourself for the preparation,
Yeah.
where is it that you took the coaching from? How did you use that coaching to take yourself to the next level where you score so high? Why don't we get into that bit?
Yeah. So I had taken my coaching from JK Shah Classes Mumbai. So it is a class where you have all the subjects there itself. So there's no separate class for all the subjects. So it was all under one roof. So I think coaching has a role to play till you understand the subjects well. I mean, that should be your approach while coaching, that you need to really fully understand the subjects and the topics well. And then I think it's all self study, that how you plan and how you revise and how many times you revise and all those things. So I think coaching you should utilize to understand concepts thoroughly, ask doubts whenever you're not understood anything, and I mean, attend the coaching classes regularly. You will you can actually understand things in a very lesser time than you would if you would sit and start studying yourself. So I think that really helps. And my focus while my coaching was only to understand as much as possible, and then I plan my self study during the study weeks.
Hmm. So next question stemming from that same bit, Komal, you talked about how you made sure you were disciplined. You'd come home and you make sure you study. But a lot of us have times when we are, not motivated. It seems like you just don't want to study anymore. So how do you pull yourself out of that deep dive, and how did you sort of bring yourself back on track again?
Yeah. So I think staying positive and motivated, I think, is definitely a very tough task. I mean, during the times, and especially in our attempt when the exams were postponed a lot of times. I mean, motivation was something which we really lacked, and I mean, it was very difficult to hold on. So I think when I really felt that I'm done and I can't do it anymore, I readily took a break from studies for a few days, and I was like, okay, clear. If I don't want the negativity to sink it at all, so it's better you take a break. You keep those books aside. 2-3 days, you divert your mind. Do what you like, and then you again gather that motivation and sit back again.
Mhm.
So I feel it's okay to take a break. I mean, it's not a waste of time at all, but don't let that negativity, sink in. So just divert yourself for some days and gather that again and, sit back.
Mhm.
So that's what was my strategy when I really lacked the motivation.
Right. And you had the time, so time permitted you to take those breaks, meaning you started your preparation right when you had 3 years to go, or did you sort of start slow and speed it up? What was the time frame for you like in terms of
Yeah.
effort?
So I think starting too early is also not very advisable because you will get saturated very soon. So I mean, if you're like doing a lot of things for a very long time, you will definitely saturate yourself at some time. And if you start late, you won't be able to cover it well. So I think right time, starting at the right time is very, very important. So as I said, for the first 2 years, I only went to the coaching classes and tried to understand things properly. And if I couldn't understand anything, I used to just clear my doubts there and there itself. So I think it was only attending the classes and understanding for the first 2 years. Then 2 or 3 months before my study leave, I started to discipline myself that I have to come home from office and give 2-3 hours no matter what. So I mean, from that I just build the momentum for 2 to 3 months, and you could cover a lot of things in that time as well. And then in the leave period, you dedicatedly give 12 hours or whatever you can, the maximum you can during those days. So I think this was the time frame, so which I followed.
Okay, and follow-up question to that, Yash Mirani is asking, prior to how many months of the exam were you finished with all of your tuition? So you said
Okay.
you put in 2 years for the tuition. So were you finished with all of them by the end of the 2 years?
No, it wasn't finished. So I mean, during the study leave also, I think I completed my classes in January. My exams were scheduled in May. So I think proper 3 months before the exam, I finished my coaching, and I think that was okay because coaching classes were only for 2-3 hours a particular day. So I mean that is okay. You can give 3 hours, and then the rest of the day you can utilize. And in the last 3 months, it was only self study like all the time.
Mhm. We have the next question where Swapan asked that in November 2020, the strategic financial management paper was very tough in the history of CA final exams. He says, how did you prepare for this subject? How did you tackle that paper?
Okay. So as I said, like I'm really a little inclined and biased towards SFM because that was my favorite subject. But I think definitely agreeing that the paper was very out of the box and not something that you can really expect. So what I did once I read the paper, I got that idea that okay, this is going to be a really challenging one, and there's a lot of out of box questions. So I just first of all I ensured I do not panic seeing this paper. I mean, if it's difficult for me, it's going to be difficult for everyone. So I did not panic. So what I was doing is I was hunting for that one or two questions which I'm very sure about. I
Mhm.
just forgot what is asked, I just hunted for those two questions, took them up, did it nicely. So that actually, give me a booster that, okay, come on, you've done this too, and now you can really attempt those others as well. Then I took one question at a time, thought about it, applied as much concepts that I knew, integrated a lot of things which I could, and I tried to do it. And once I really got a hang of it, things became a little simpler. I mean, to attempt the balance papers, balance questions as well. So I think the most important thing which I would like to is don't panic. Have faith on your conceptual clarity. I mean, if you really are conceptually strong, you can really think and apply those concepts to solve such out of the box papers. And really look for that one or two questions that can give you a boost to attempt the remaining paper as well.
Okay, the next question we have is from someone, she's Renuka, who has known you since class 11th,
Oh, hi,
now
Renuka.
talking
Yeah.
classes. She says she's genuinely happy for you with all her heart. And so she wants to know, how would you describe your growth throughout all these years, the 16-year-old versus the 22-year-old Komal?
Okay. Yeah, hi Renuka, and thank you for your best wishes. So regarding the growth, I would like to say that when I actually started, with this course, CA after my 12th standard, at that time I really had no idea that it's going to take so much determination, patience, for such a long time. And I think this is really different from what you do in your class 10, 12, or graduation. I mean, professional courses are really really different, needs a very different approach to studying. And so I think this course has really taught me to sheer determination is something which I learned a lot. And I think if after doing this course, I think you can really manage a lot of things, because what you've put in for this course is something which is really, even I think that how did I do so much over this years? I mean, this really makes you step out of your comfort zone, and it needs a lot of efforts. So I think that is something I really like.
Okay, I think that sounds like a beautiful note to wind up this conversation, Komal. It has been such a pleasure speaking with you. Our audience has been super pumped, super kicked when they were listening to you. And I really want to thank you for your time and for joining us. To
Thank
the
you so much.
audience,
I had a great chat.
thank you so much. To the audience, I want to remind that if you're preparing for your VAT, for your PI, for your GD, we have a lot of preparation material on our website at insideim.com. Please check it out. We work really hard to make sure aspirants and graduates alike benefit from us and the products we have to offer. So check those out and stay tuned to have more conversations like the one we had with Komal today. Thanks so much, everyone. Thank you, Komal. It was lovely. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much.